Good morning and welcome to the Daily Cyber Briefing for Friday the 30th of May. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Mozilla has released an update to Firefox. So you may be aware earlier this week, I think it was on Tuesday, Firefox released an update, or Mozilla released an update to Firefox to bring it to 139.0. There have been some known issues, or have been some issues associated with that, especially on PCs with Nvidia GPUs, which is pretty common these days. An update has been released, so it's what they're calling an emergency update. So the update is 139.0.1. If you are using Firefox, it is worth checking to see whether you need this update or not. In fact, it does no harm to apply the update, even if you aren't using Nvidia graphics cards. Best to keep on top of patching anyway. With something as straightforward as a browser patch, applying the patch is probably easier than working out whether you do technically need it or not. There's an article in Bleeping Computer which will link to the briefing, which explains what the issues are, not specifically security related. However, keeping your browser up to date is definitely something that we would strongly recommend anyway. So if using Firefox, update is available. Okay, Microsoft, you may be aware, you should, if you're using it, Microsoft Authenticator, you will be aware of the fact that it is being shelved. If you had forgotten or weren't aware of this, Microsoft Authenticator, the app, will cease to function, I think, in, well, certainly later this year. October springs to mind. I can't remember exactly what the date is. No, July. Autofill via Authenticator ends in July 2025. So apparently the app is now giving you warnings. However, if you are using it like sporadically and haven't used it for a while, you might not have been aware of this, or you might not see the warnings. Just be aware that as from June, you'll no longer be able to save new passwords into Authenticator, and after July, or some point during July, you will no longer be able to use Authenticator to autofill passwords, and from August, your saved passwords will no longer be accessible in Authenticator. Microsoft has two recommendations. First one is they're replacing Authenticator with Edge. Now, yes, it's a tick box exercise to migrate from Authenticator to Edge. It doesn't take all your password history with it, but it takes pretty much all your other passwords. Don't believe it takes much, if any, of the other information that you might have in Authenticator. So I don't think there's a full migration path from Authenticator to anything else. So yes, you're being prompted to say, use my browser as my password manager. I would just say, before you do that, or before you encourage your users to do that, or before your users just do that on their own, take a moment to do a risk assessment on whether using Microsoft's browser as your password manager is actually the way forward that you want to go. It may be okay, it may meet your risk appetite. However, don't by default get driven into a technical change by a vendor without understanding what the consequences of that change is. I know I have personally been a little skeptical in the past of browser-based password managers. I can't point to an event that made me feel like that, but I've always used a dedicated password manager and a dedicated Authenticator type app if I want to be managing 2FA keys or 2FA codes or passkeys or whatever it might be. Water's been muddied slightly recently, I would say, in this arena. There's an awful lot of potential passkey type solutions out there. Apple, just as an example, Apple offers one. And my password manager offers one. I have a personal password manager as well as a work password manager. They both offer passkeys, so keeping an eye on where your passkeys actually are, I think that's going somewhere in there. There is scope for confusion and/or vulnerability and/or generally messing about. I haven't quite identified what the issue is yet, but I can't hand on heart say I know where all my passkeys for all my apps are, or exactly which passkeys are in which app. Anyway, so Authenticator is going away. When I say Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator is going away. They're pushing you to shift to be using Edge as your password manager and your Authenticator solution. Might work for you, but don't assume that it's the right way forward without doing some work on this. Hopefully, if you've got a large environment, you're going to have to migrate. You've done this already. If you haven't, time is running out. Okay, and just to finish up for today and for this week, in fact, I came across an article about something which is referred to as a brushing scam targeting Amazon customers. How this works, it's kind of twofold. As an Amazon user, you find yourself having an unsolicited package delivered to you. Regardless of whether you try to return it or whether you just pocket it and hope for the best, in the background, this may be being used in order for a less reputable organization to then create positive reviews off the back of a known purchase. Because there's a lot of the review sections on e-commerce sites, they do actually define whether the user has, or whether the consumer has actually bought the product or not through the site, or are they just reviewing something that they genuinely don't know very much about, kind of thing. So however, if the vendor sends it to you, then creates an account that looks like you, and then uses that account to create the review, they can create themselves 5-star reviews and move up the recommendations tables, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. Quite an expensive way of buying positive reviews. I would have thought that just having a decent product would be a little bit less of an expensive way of doing it. However, in the background, what you've got to bear in mind is that in order for an account to be created that looks a bit like you, and then to have packages delivered to your address, somebody needs to know your name and address. right? So it is often an indicator that information, at the very least, who you are, where you live, and that you're, let's say, an Amazon customer. But I'm sure this scam would work for Temu and anything else that's any of Alibaba, you name it, any of these the big commerce sites. The scam would work. So your data has been leaked and is being used inappropriately. So that's something that should ring some alarm bells. You should be keeping an eye out for other potential fraud. Now, the other side of it is some of these packages have been seen to have QR codes for further information about the purchase, or for returns, like scan here to return the whatever it might be. So be aware that if the package was unsolicited, it is entirely possible that it's being sent from people who have malicious intent. The QR codes have been seen to link to malicious sites associated with the download of malware and the compromise of systems. So be very cautious about using the information on the label in order to do things like, the logical stuff like, oh, this must be a mistake, let me just work out how to get the returns sorted out. Oh, there's a QR code, let me just scan that. Oh, look, my machine's now got ransomware on it. Kind of thing. Probably actually not ransomware. It's probably much more likely to be info stealers, cryptocurrency wallet stealers, the usual sort of stuff. So yeah, interesting. Or at least interesting to me. Interesting piece of fraud going on there. One that I wasn't aware of previously, or at least not consciously aware of. So yeah, something to add to the I need to think about that list. Right, that's all from me for today. Hope you have a good Friday. Hope you have